Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we come to already, it's flown by, to our concluding session of day one of Digital Reconnect Americas. We have a panel session on for you now, looking at GSE and an equipment strategy for enabling an effective restart. I'm delighted to welcome a lineup of GSE experts who are all going to give us their perspective on the challenges and some of the solutions that might be out there. We are going to have three mini presentations on this one, and we're going to begin with Ittay Hayut, who is joining us from Hoopo. You are going to get us underway with the first session, and then I believe we're going to go to Jan, who we met earlier, Jan de Leeuw at TCR, for the second. And introducing, we've got Joe Griffith, who is the commercial manager at Mallaghan Americas. Welcome, Joe. We're going to hear your presentation third, and then we're going to come to Fabbio, who we heard from just a moment ago from Greater Toronto Airports Authority, and get a user perspective on some of the challenges and comments that you might have that you've experienced there in Toronto. So we'll also, once the final presentations conclude, we want your questions on this one, so please do submit those into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and we'll come to those. But let us get underway with Ittay Hayut, who is CEO at Hoopo. And Ittay, you are going to kick us off with your presentation on enabling an effective restart and the role GSE strategy can play. So I will hand over to you, Ittay. Welcome.
Perfect, Max. Thanks a lot. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can. Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. So yeah, thanks for having me, first of all. And just like you said, my name is Ty, and I'm the CEO of Hoopo. What we do at Hoopo is we help GHAs, transportation and waste management companies improve operations using cost and power efficient visibility. And I think what we as a panel are going to discuss today is how can you use technology and innovation to cope with the during and post COVID-19 era. And this is about fluctuating flight volumes and manpower shortages, as well as incoming new manpower that needs to be educated through a certain training period. And the question of how can we make technology intuitive enough for it to improve what we try to accomplish as an aviation industry. And although we are a technology vendor, let me tell you also, we look at technology as a means to an end. And the question that we and our partners always try to answer is, what kind of challenges within specific processes can we break down and solve? Or more than that, what 20% of the effort can we do in order to create 80% of the value? And another thing that we came across in the past 12 months, and on this presentation, I'm going to actually share a couple examples from what we've done in the past year. We learned that in times of crisis, the enemy of the good is the perfect. So the question is, how can you tackle this pain point intuitively enough? And we specifically focus on end-to-end GSE visibility. We offer plug-and-play telematic solutions that create continuous visibility for GSE all across the airports, as well as create data that allows an improvement of decision-making. So with no further ado, and to not bore you all guys to death, I'm going to jump to my first example. One of the challenges that our partners were facing is a rise in cargo demand in specific stations around the world. And with a small to medium size of fleets and a certain amount of manpower, it's extremely hard to tackle a growing requirement for incoming flights, ULDs, cargo shipments, etc. And we needed to answer the question of how can we automate this process in a very smooth manner that doesn't need to completely re-educate the employees of the GHA. And so we took the concept of using the Lime and Bird apps that some of you guys may know to find electric scooters around your hometown, and we shifted it into the ground operation space. So nowadays, within 2 days of rollout, we create visibility not just to the location of different types of dollies around the apron, but also to the availability of the dollies using logics regarding idle time or load sensors and things like that. Because the concept is, we all know, and I'm sure the audience can relate, dollies all look the same. They can be taken by another GHA, they can be taken by an airline customer, they can be misplaced all around the airport. But if you can create a solution that it's very easy to start using because it's very intuitive, then you can start automating processes and solve a lot of headache. And if you solve a significant headache, then the ROI is usually there. And just to show you another example for a byproduct of how actually technology and innovation can help create value even if you don't use it on a day-to-day basis, then what you're seeing here is a sample from utilization data of GSE throughout the day in an airport. So we had a customer tell us that they're going to buy a significant amount of new dollies because they projected a growth, again, in cargo shipments to a specific region in Southeast Asia. And when we asked them, or when they asked themselves, why not buy 80% of the assets or 120% of what they wanted to purchase, there's no real intuitive answer to it. It's not data-based. We all know it. We try to project from experience and we try to buy a spare pieces of equipment. But the truth is, if you are able to say that you're using 90% of your fleet or 50% of your fleet, this would really drive a different kind of approach to procurement and resource allocation, because this customer on the screen here, of course, it's a sample data, but if they only use 50% of their assets at the peak times of the day, then they can reallocate some of the assets to a new airport and save 20–30% on new procurement expenditure. And so I think, I try to keep my examples very short, but if there's anything at all to take from this presentation is to ask yourselves, regardless of technology and innovation, if you have a process where you are facing challenges, what is the 20% that I can do very easily that will give me 80% of the value? You don't need to solve all of the world's problems in one day, but we do learn that we can implement things that can make our lives much easier and therefore improve our quality of service and our operations. So thank you all very much for listening, and I'd love to take questions afterwards.
Thank you, Ty. Thank you very much. Interesting points that you raised there, and we'll come to those the Q&A at the end. But I'll keep things moving by handing over to Jan de Leeuw at TCR. If you're ready to go with your, here we go. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Max and team, and thank you for having us on the panel to share our ideas and our views on GSE trends and GSE strategies whilst we're coming out of the pandemic, gradually coming out of the pandemic. So very happy to be with you all at the end of this afternoon / early evening. I'll be speaking to you about how we at TCR, specifically as a group, but with a focus on the Americas, of course, see the trends. I'll be sharing some ideas with you and then happy to discuss afterwards, obviously. And I think these trends will lead to an equipment strategy for an effective restart, but above everything also very much a sustainable restart. And if we move on to the next slide, basically, I would like to start from the trends and the challenges. I think all of us know those. So just quickly recapping what we see and what are the relevant challenges post-COVID when it comes to ground support equipment specifically. I think we all know there's a lot of uncertainty still around the patch, uncertainty about speed and size of travel recovery. In some markets, we might have a good view on what is happening domestically. However, the international component remains very important and remains, unfortunately, until further notice, very, very uncertain. So uncertainty is a key element. Compliance with more strict health regulations and travel restrictions, obviously there's a lot of oversized fleet around the patch, as was mentioned earlier on in a couple of the presentations. There is a huge pressure, obviously, on cost management. There's a shift towards cargo versus PAX operations. However, once PAX operations will start up again, that shift might shift back a little bit again, because a lot of the cargo, which is typically traditionally transported in the belly of the PAX airlines, is now on the cargo side. That will change again. So there's also a shift there. There's a refocus in financing priorities, and we also see that the focus on decarbonization, specifically for North America, is going to be there again. It was paused for a certain moment, but a number of factors, of course, lead to us believing that decarbonization is again going to be one of the priorities. So if we look at these trends and challenges, we move over to the next slide. Then at TCR, we believe that, and I have just 3 slides for all of us to share with you. We very much believe that now is the time for companies to strategically look at an equipment transformation plan. It's not just about restarting as effectively as possible. Of course, that's key, but it's also about looking beyond and looking at a sustainable solution for the long term, knowing that a lot of the challenges that we have will be there to stay, and the world has changed. I think we all recognize that. And that's also exactly what we see a lot of companies do today, or they start to do this. They start looking into really changing completely their strategy and transforming their GSE approach. And we believe there's 3 levers for that, 3 key levers when you think about GSE and transformation of your equipment plan. One key lever, and I mentioned it earlier on during the presentation, is flexibility. Equipment flexibility is paramount and is only going to be more important when we look towards the future. On the back of what you see on the left-hand side of the slide, the uncertainties that we mentioned, the oversizing, the temporary shifts back to cargo and back, decarbonization, which will bring along changes in the specs of the fleet. We believe flexibility is key, and flexibility enables companies to improve in terms of speed to market. Extremely short ramp-up lead times. It's what most of us are living today. Suddenly travel restrictions are lifted and you have to be ready to go. Finding the balance between narrow body, wide body and pax cargo. A lot of uncertainty also in terms of who is there, who's going to stay, duration, stability of contracts. Of course, moving towards electrical GSE. And also, let's not forget about that, park GSE in an efficient way when you don't need it. So the first lever for us, in our view, is flexibility in order to transform your GSE and your fleet in a sustainable and effective way. The second lever, which is key in our view and which we see on the next slide, is fleet and cost management. Needless to say that with the enormous pressure that there is on cost management and fleet management, and very happy to see what Ittay just presented in terms of the numbers, the 50%, the 40%. It only shows that there's much more that we can do and much more that we should do. Making sure that your fleet is perfectly fit for operations, not too much, but also not too little. Improve the availability levels of GSE, tracking, monitoring. I mean, that's key. We've talked about that many times during today, and for sure we'll still talk about it. Focus on total cost of ownership. Very important in our view is trying to complete the standardization by airport and by equipment family. Very often we see that standardization is half cooked. I mean, there is like 2 brands in an airport and 3 brands maybe, and we try to move into that direction. But once we take another decision 2 years down the road, the standardization is not quite there, and there's a lot of gain in terms of efficiency in standardization. So there we would say, like, let's go for it all the way, at least per family, per station, and also focus correctly on GSE. Whether you do it in-house or outsourced, if you do it, you need to do it well, and you need to really treat it as a core business or part of your core business as it is. And then that brings us to the next slide, and the last slide from my side, which is the third lever. We can move to the next one. Thank you, Sari. Third lever is financing. Financing is key in terms of ground support equipment, has always been key because of the huge investments that we are talking about. And we do see a shift in financing priorities in the industry. Financing has not necessarily become more expensive, but it certainly has become scarcer, and it's also become much more vital, and it will continue to become much more vital. So it's only logical that companies think twice before committing into a certain direction when it comes to financing. And in order to support that shift in financing priorities, things that people can do, that companies can do, is monetizing, of course, the existing fleet wherever there is excess, or wherever there is too old or not good enough anymore because we want to move, or we need to move to electrical, to automatic. So monetizing the existing fleet is certainly one element to support your shift in financing priorities. Avoiding capex for future needs which are not stable doesn't mean you have to avoid capex all the way, but more focused capex on needs that are stable and that are there to stay for the long term, and then focus on the total cost of ownership. Certainly looking at ground support equipment over its whole useful lifetime, but more so over its whole depreciation time. So we believe these are a number of key trends. We in a nutshell believe that companies should start looking into changing their strategy and transforming their GSE, and that these three levers, financing priorities shifted, fleet and cost management, and certainly equipment flexibility are key in order to bring us to that next level. That's basically from my side, Max. So glad to hand back over to you and continue the conversation in a moment together with the colleagues.
Brilliant stuff. We look forward to picking up some of your points alongside Ty's at the Q&A. But for now, I will hand over to Joe, if he's ready to go, from Mallaghan Americas. And the floor is yours, Joe, I hope.
Appreciate it, Max. And Jan, good to see you, and everyone else. Appreciate everybody taking the time to get together, even virtually, and have a insightful conversation. It's been a while, so look forward to having a discussion. So let me let's see.
Just say while Joe's prepping up the screen share there, if you do have questions on this topic, what you've seen from Ty and from Jan so far, just drop them into the Q&A and we will come to them. There we go. Joe,
Sorry about that.
It's all yours.
No, so again, I appreciate everybody coming together and having the conversation. So my name is Joe Griffith. I'm the commercial manager for Mallaghan in Americas. I've been with Mallaghan about 3 years, and prior to that, I was with Delta for a little over 10 years in their GSE division. So from an equipment perspective, there's a lot of experience and engagement with some of the innovation and some of the talking points that we're working off of. So basically, as a high level overview of what we're talking about, the 3 points is, how does the game plan change? How do the suppliers work about it? And what does the innovation look like? So, and the role of telematics and data. So Mallaghan as an organization, we are founded in Northern Ireland. We have got factories up in Northern Ireland and then assembly facilities here in Atlanta and another one in China. So kind of our focus has always been innovation for aviation and with regard to ground support equipment, trying to identify customer needs and innovate the product, innovate the design, innovate the integration to where it's best suited. So COVID has certainly driven a renewed focus on value for dollar, innovation, product quality, product effectiveness. And that's an area where we took the opportunity to really drill down and focus on our core products and innovate those products to where they meet what the new marketplace will look like. We were pre-COVID, we were building 10, 12 trucks a week, vehicles a week, and global footprints pretty substantial. But we're talking about the game plan and how does it change and how do you reconfigure the operation, and from an equipment standpoint, there's been a lot of innovation and a lot of development of new products and new technologies to help supplement what will be a rapidly changing environment with regard to manpower constraints and technology constraints. So some of the products that we offer, that we talk about, that can help operations quickly spool up or change or reconfigure would be similar to like an extendable belt loader product that reduces the manpower requirement. De-icers that can be driven from the basket of the vehicle versus having to have someone in the basket and in the driver's position. Rapid cargo delivery vehicles that can move the cargo and product quickly off the ramp and reduce the overall turn time and the asset requirements to perform regular services. And above all else, it's trying to focus and stay in an area where there's value for dollar. And Jan touched on it a little bit. It's a capital sensitive environment everyone's not going to run out and buy new equipment. So it has to be maximum value for dollar in these investments. And so developing these products has been a focus for us, and really honing in and trying to deliver this into a market that's otherwise been challenged. The next point is how can suppliers help the customers deliver their quest for agility? And this has been something we've worked on even before I was with Mallaghan. It was a focus of trying to get customers aligned in their expectations of what their equipment will look like. And so often you'll have vastly different configurations of equipment that does the same relative thing. Belt loaders and vacuum lab trucks and catering cabins, there's an enormous variation of something that does the same thing. One company may touch the same aircraft and another company touches it in a different location, but they're completely different configurations. So we have tried pre-pandemic, post-pandemic to align those specifications among customers, get an industry forum and a conversation going, and say, these are the reasons we had this, these are the reasons we had that. Everybody talk honestly and openly and say, right, we can agree on an 80% configuration. What that does is it allows us as a OEM and a manufacturer to go out and build stock and speculative common spec units that can be called off quickly for contract startups, or even contracts coming to an end, where it allows the asset to go back into a pool that everybody's aligned in what the expectation is. So if you're working with the likes of a TCR or someone else, that there's a home for that asset, and it becomes a lot easier for them to move that along down to the different service providers and supply chain. And the other point about the quest for agility is pricing. If we're not having to design a bespoke unit for each and every customer, we can leverage volumes and alignment of specification for better pricing. Again, a market that's going to be sensitive to capital expenses for quite some time. If everyone is relatively aligned on their expectation of equipment and assets, allows us to go to our supply chain, bring the prices down. We can have these products and these assets ready to go at a better price point. And then talking about finance models that are advantageous for agility and the rapidly changing environment, and utilization charges based on how much you actually use the unit, or floor plan type stocking where you have first right of refusal with a small incremental payment that holds the asset at the ready for the customer, that just help ensure that they have what they need in an environment where it'll quickly change, and their ability to get skilled and trained ramp operations or operators will be a challenge for the foreseeable future. And when we talk about innovation, there's the product innovation, which we've already talked about, but there's the data innovation. And different manufacturers have different strategies of this. We choose to take the strategy of our core is equipment manufacturing. We are not into the business of designing data platforms and data aggregation systems and telemetry. That's just not our core business. Is cutting, welding, machining, building equipment that has innovation in its design and function. The business of aggregating data is not a core for us. So working with individual users and customers, we would open up data points on our CAN or our telemetry systems on board and CAN bus data, to where it can be transmitted up through the customer's end user platform or portal. We don't want to get into a situation where Delta has a portal for us and for this OEM and that OEM. If they have a preferred service provider, here's our CAN protocol. We will upload that data, and with that data, to some of the previous talking points, it's going to be what's the utilization, where's the location, how do you quickly bring it in. It allows for a leaner, more focused fleet strategy, and it allows for a better understanding of what your actual utilization is. So the final point on the innovation is just an open dialogue. I mean, OEMs, even amongst ourselves as OEMs and amongst the customers, is a dialogue to how the products need to be tailored and designed to suit these changing market conditions. So that's our view on the whole thing. Open to obviously communication and question. I'll do the best I can to provide some corporate feedback to it. But
thank you, Joe. Interesting thoughts and adaptations that you're making. We'll pick up on those very shortly. That's the last of the presentations, but I'm just going to invite Fabbio to give us a perspective as a user and what you've seen so far and some of the day-to-day challenges you have been facing with GSE as a result of this pandemic.
Hello, everyone, and thanks again, Max. It's great to hear the perspective and insights from my fellow panelists, and as a gut check, it's good for myself because I'm on the same thought process as everybody. But if I could quickly and kind of informally, I guess, just speak to from an airport standpoint, I think we've had several GSE challenges exacerbated by the pandemic, but definitely I think it's good to point out that these challenges kind of existed before the pandemic, strictly because I think that some of the natures of our business is changing. I think back to when I started on the ramp, traffic was generally point to point. You'd have a 37 with 5 or 6 carts. And now with the focus on connections, you have 12, 14 carts out there for connection bags, tail-to-tail connection bags, connection cargo. A lot of the product has changed, and we haven't as a whole done a good job of adapting with that. I think this has led to a negative impact on the safety of aircraft, people, buildings, and vehicles themselves, as well as hindering airside operations, given, generally we have a finite space to operate airside in, and the operating window keeps getting smaller because of the aircrafts are bigger and the type of products we have going on them. I think ULD inventory for us specifically is pretty much out of control, simply because the ability to track them is non-existent, at least in the Canadian market. And we generally, we've even started over the pandemic to see multiple cans from airlines that have never operated in Toronto end up in Toronto with no way of getting out. So we'll follow up with whoever owns them to find that they actually have no way of telling what's here. Inventory tracking, even for the companies that are operating at our airport, is a challenge because they're never really fully aware of what inventory is on hand. And to be honest, most of it is done manually, be a fellow driving around, doing manual check-in. So I think there's a lot of ground that can be made there. These units themselves cost money, so buying more than you need is a challenge. But then having them out there and not used provides opportunities for them to be stolen or damaged. So there's a lot of opportunity that can be happening there. Something like tow bars. Previous, when I was on the ramp, everybody had their own special tow bars. Now we see general tow bars that all look the same. So in the vein of standardization, can we get away with everybody using the same pool of tow bars? Let's say something to that effect. Again, part of the connection dilemma is that we generally have stacked hubs, which means everybody needs an abundance of equipment at one point, and then they're not using it throughout the day. So the amount of downtime and efficiency for these units is challenging, but it's hard to wrap your head around when you don't have proper analytics or data to provide this. Rolling stock is another challenge that has a motor on the function, such as PCAs, GPUs, and air starts. We kind of pivoted in Toronto anyways to move to having these units equipped on the jet bridges. So now we end up with a lot of these rolling motorized units sitting there with very little downtime. And as we were right-sizing our parking, we were kind of asking for the hour usage on some of these units, and we were surprised to find some units that barely had any hours over the last 2 years. So again, having what you need on station is key. Belt loaders and loaders, pushbacks, same challenges. We've seen electrification become a challenge. Speaking specifically to the Canadian climate, a lot of the tractors aren't really well suited, the ones we see anyways, for operating in inclement weather. which means that they're generally used in the bag room. So they're almost duplicating your fleet because you need an abundance of gas tractors to operate outside. But when it comes to utilization, it's kind of all across the board. So there's a lot of room to review on that. And options to consider, I would say, is exploring the benefits as discussed multiple times today. Just pooling in general, whether it be pooling by a company you enter into a contract with, or pooling across the airport for various companies. But there's a lot to be gained by looking at how we use our assets and whatnot. Additionally, improve safety features for units, whether it be proximity warnings, backup warnings, impact warnings, all those kind of things. And then again, the tracking technology and oversight technology, I can't understate how important that is to really understand your business, especially now where money is tight and business cases have to be quite sound. I would imagine that if you're looking to invest, somebody would invariably be asking, do you need it? How much do you need it? What's the downtime for the units you have? And generally, we're still a little bit antiquated, even ourselves. With our airport authority fleet, we're not really there yet. We have pooled equipment for our departments, but the analytics of what's used and what you need isn't very sound. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to be made up there for sure. And it's good to hear that multiple folks are looking at this and investing time to really think. But as I stated even in my presentation before, we have a good, for all intents and purposes, we've hit a reset button here. So it's good to see everybody coming together and building consensus on what the agreed standard is going forward, and then making a go for it for sure.
Thank you, Fabbio. For any of our participants, if you want to drop any questions to the panel, then please do it in the Q&A and I'll pick them up from there. Gentlemen, Fabbio, they're talking about the pooling and whether pooling as a result of the pressures that operators are under. A comment from you all on whether you see that becoming a more common model at airports across the Americas as a consequence of the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, even something as simple internally, we took stock of chalk and cones, for example. They generally end up in snow melters historically. So we kind of pulled the ground handlers in Toronto, and we were shocked to find that some spend $60,000 every year on chalks and cones. So we have other airports in Canada that provide chalks and cones at every gate, and nobody's allowed to have them unless they're for equipment. So, something like that's massive savings, but it, improves safety. Less pressure to operate for the ramp crew because they're not running around looking for these items. They're positioned at the gates. Some airports have started that reached out to us talking about the airport providing carts, and then everybody goes into that stock. There's, I think globally, some airports that have started to talk about providing a pooled fleet of units, and you would use some kind of your ID pass to make it work like that. But I think we generally need to do it better and start thinking outside the box as what's out there. But I think really tracking the analytics of what you even use. Like I say, we removed GSE off of the field just to make it safer, in a number of areas. And when we started offhand asking about the hours usage, we were shocked to find some of these units hadn't been moved in a year, a couple hours in 2 years. These cost money to buy, the upkeep on them, and then the space, the insurance. Like there's a lot of debundled stuff that are attributed to those. So I think moving forward, there's a few different models that could probably work depending on what your unique setup is. And we shouldn't leave any rock unturned. And by all means, if somebody has an idea, we're always interested to hear what's out there.
Jan, do you see pooling being a natural consequence and reaction to the pressures that we see across the Americas, across the world?
Yeah, I think pooling is certainly one of the possible answers, and I very much like what Fabbio mentioned. I think pooling makes sense when it's targeted, like the idea of doing the tow bars, the cones, things like that. Pooling doesn't always have to be going for the big shot and the whole airport. It has to be, we believe, targeted. Then it makes sense, and then you'll capture the value immediately, and it's manageable, and then you can build it up family after family. So yeah, I believe it certainly is one of the answers, but very much so when you target it on a certain family of equipment, depending on the dynamics of the airport. Max.
Any other comments on pooling for time, Joe? I mean, Joe, you're not a slightly different take on it, but it was interesting your comments about how achieving perhaps more standardization amongst customers is another way to drive efficiency and reduce cost and allow you to give more affordable options. Can you tell us a bit more about that and how it's translating?
Yeah, I mean, it was an effort that we had kind of gone down pre-COVID, but aligning the specification of certain assets among key players allowed us to go out and provide stability in our build plan, because these RFPs were out and we knew that these were the players, and we had reasonable consensus among those players that this is the type of asset or truck that they would be looking for. So we can go out and provide stability in our own business by continuously building and knowing that someone will get this asset at the end of it, regardless of who the win is. So even amongst the major airlines, where there wasn't necessarily an RFP driven thing, but it was more a cyclical nature of asset investment. So 1 year Delta may get money, or United, and because we had some relative alignment on those trucks, they would often be talking to each other and say, hey, are you going to take those trucks down there? And so just trying to get that open communication was immensely helpful at the GSE level, because we could get the customers talking about what they really needed and the end users. So we've taken that now and pushed it on down to other products beyond just our typical high lift application. It's aircraft maintenance lift trucks and our de-icer applications, airport buses, just trying to find 80-20. And Ty, I think earlier we were talking about 80-20. If we can get 80% of our configuration right, the back 20 typically can be done end of line, and it doesn't disrupt our production. It doesn't impact greatly the customer's delivery goals and timelines, nor cost. It's just trying to realize the best value. So we will continue to push that model and push for the communication at our customers level, so that we can try and provide them the assets they need and the time frame they need it, effective cost position, and stability in our own business as we recover and grow.
Thanks, Joe. Ty, you showed some really fascinating images on the app about usage patterns and where equipment was moving and operating at a particular apron. How easy is it to then translate that into efficiency savings and money savings? And is that something you assist with, or is it something that is easy enough for the teams operating at the handling station to do themselves?
I think the largest challenge that we're facing is actually in finding a way to impact the process that has been in place for decades, probably, without raising antagonism or requiring too much education. So I'll get to the ROI in a moment, but I think this is the main challenge. And the good thing is that this is probably one of the first panels I'm on where everyone agrees with everyone. So at least we have the same mindset, but it's still not as easy, right? It's not as easy because if you take an airport authority, then you have many players within the airport authority. So when it goes to ROI, it's always the question of who's going to put the upfront investment. And in many cases, there is an upfront investment, and therefore, especially in times of crisis, it's pretty challenging to manage this. So as Joe mentioned, again, I think doing the 20% with the 80% of impact is the thing that you should look at. What we're doing is we're actually kind of like TCR with assets. We're taking telematics and we're leasing them out. So we're spreading costs mainly on the OpEx to help our partners in times of crisis to start gaining ROI from the get-go without needing to place a huge investment when no one has the resources to it. But just to say another thing, I think that once you provide something that is very intuitive to use, and I keep repeating the word intuitive because especially now people don't always have the mindset for things like that. So if it's very easy to use, very easy to implement and make sense, like I think Fabbio mentioned, utilization of assets. It's very easy to measure utilization, but the question is, how will it impact the process? If you know that you only use a GPU for 2 hours in a month, how can you make people use it more or split the utilization between the assets? This is where the challenge lies in. And I think there is a general agreement between the different parties in the airport to try and accomplish this kind of thing.
Jan, in your presentation, I spotted a comment there around building down excess GSE. Tell me more about that and what it means and how that you see that playing a part.
Yeah, so building down excess GSE is one of the key elements to take out costs and also to take out inefficiencies. And I think first of all, maybe onto the point that Ty made, it's about spreading the use. And if you have too much, everybody's using all the assets, but underutilizing a too big number of assets, that there's a lot of cost in that as well. So it's better to bring down the number of GSE to what you really need and take out the ones you don't need anymore and concentrate your usage on a smaller set. There's substantial savings in that. Where we help our customers as TCR in the Americas and across the network in terms of building down excess equipment is basically the classical sale and leaseback operations, where we focus on a key family on a station, for example. We buy off the family from the customer, we lease them back exactly what they need, and then we will ramp up with them at the moment that they need additional equipment. And the last point on that is that, of course, building down excess equipment gives you a much cleaner platform when ramping up again to be able to standardize, for example, point that Joe made as well, or to be able to move into more green GSE or into new technologies. So if you cut down first, then it's more easy and more clean to rebuild up on that platform, Max.
Thanks, Jan. We are coming up to 5 o'clock, so I just wanted to give the last couple of minutes. If I could ask you all just to summarize what you think the legacy of the pandemic will be on GSE equipment strategies in the Americas. Tough one to finish off on, but Ty, we started with you. Can I ask you that one first? Just summary, what do you think the impact, the lasting impact of this will be on the way people operate their equipment here?
I think that, and this depends on human psychology, because I think we usually tend to have a very short memory. But if we manage to keep what we've learned in the past year, which has been challenging for all of us, is again and Jan said it several times, it's the concept of understanding that a shared economy or being able to improve utilization for smaller amounts of fleets will make more sense to everyone, and it has this butterfly effect. So even if it's just your assets, it will eventually grow to other people in its evolution. And I think it will also lead to the fact that an airport authority might, and this started happening before COVID, might step into asking the handlers to improve what they currently do.
Thank you, Ty. Thank you very much. Jan, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, so I think if the legacy, one thing we will take away, I hope, I strongly believe that will be the case, is a more focused and a more clever use of equipment. I think it's all about the data, the cost pressure, and so using them more efficiently, more effectively, and more knowing what you use. And so the big takeaway from that will be that we will ease the path for further innovation and efficiency and safety improvements, but using the GSE in a more clever way, a more focused way, and a way, more data-driven way that I believe will be one of the key legacies that we will take away from this pandemic.
Thank you very much, Joe.
No, I mean, good points, and I would just add that modernization. I mean, they were everybody was in such a hurry to offload assets and to scrap, sell, get rid of. It's going to usher in a new era of innovation and technology and green and safety systems. So I think the one word that will describe it is modernization. It will push out the assets that everyone's hung on to because anecdotal data said it was more reliable or it was easier or quicker. It just the whole thing will have forced the industry, has now reset it to a much smaller size, and as it spools back up and grows, it will force them to modernize the fleet even further through acquisition of new product via a lease model or direct purchase, anything in modernization.
Thank you, Joe. And finally, Fabbio, for you.
I guess challenge the norm. Unintentionally, everything we said we unable to do due to size, time, pressure, we've been forced to do. So I think Joe kind of took the words out of my mouth, the modernization. But I think setting the trend to really, look at analytics and operate efficiently, but smartly as well. And I think there's going to be a bit of a challenge with folks coming back to, to the industry that have been out for a while to make sure that whatever changes we make, the decisions made for that are informed. And they can't understand understate the, if it's easier to use, understanding is easy for the folks, the end user, then they're going to be more adapt to want to try it. In the past, we've seen whether it be like Vaculux stuff or some of the belt loaders that were referenced to make to improve the musculoskeletal strain on staff, wasn't easily adopted by the workforce for a number of reasons. But I think going forward, if you use that as a template to say, okay, these were the challenges with deploying and getting buy-in for those, let's invest in the opportunities now to bring them with us and get them engaged, that this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is the benefit to you and the benefit to the company, and the investment for folks is that happy employees are productive employees. So I think you'll see the gains to safety in a bunch of areas from there.
Well, thank you all very much for your contributions to the topic, and please keep us posted on the story as it develops. For now, I thank you again for putting presentations together and sharing your thoughts this afternoon, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you, gents.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that brings us to the close of the conference business for day one of Digital Reconnect Americas. Tradition says about now I say to you the dress code for tonight is smart casual, and we'll meet you in the lobby and we'll be taking you off to either Panama Canal or a cruise around Miami Harbour, but unfortunately not this year, but we do hope we'll be back and doing that again very soon. So do enjoy your evenings, do enjoy your meetings if you have them coming up in the next couple of hours. Hope you have some productive discussions. We'll reconvene at the conference tomorrow at 9:30 Eastern time, so join us there, and we're going to switch our focus to cargo, starting with the vaccine and its delivery and moving on to cargo opportunities. So it should be some fascinating discussion. Please join me then, and we look forward to welcoming you back to the second day of Digital Reconnect. Hope you've enjoyed the day. Have a good evening, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.